everyone, welcome back to my channel. If you're watching this video today, it's probably because you're going through that process of applying or thinking about applying to one of the big four accounting firms. That consists of EY, PwC, Deloitte, and KPMG. And I definitely have some experience applying, the stresses that came with it, because as a co-op student at Waterloo, every term you're supposed to be trying to find a co-op placement. So I went through the process of applying to all the big four summer conferences. And for those of you that don't know, if you're someone who's in first year to third year, you can apply to their summer conferences, which essentially, if you get a conference, you pretty much have a job secured, whether that's for an internship or a co-op placement. And in my case, it was a co-op placement. But when I went to these summer conferences, a lot of students were there from different schools such as Schulich, Western, Brock, York, Laurier, just a bunch of different business schools. So it was a really, really cool opportunity, but it was definitely a very rigorous process, and there was a lot of steps that I want to talk about. So I applied for all four of the big four accounting firms in hopes I would get something, because it's definitely a little bit of a competitive process. And luckily I did get 2 acceptances. Where I got to go through the interview process, I got to actually go to the conference, and I received an offer at the end. And these 2 companies were EY and PwC. First, they both had a similar process before the interview stage. So essentially, both companies required a resume and a cover letter and a video interview. EY's video interview, they actually gave you the question ahead of time, and it was as simple as, why do you want to attend the ELP conference, which was the summer conference that EY hosts. And for PwC, it was just randomized questions that people will get. But with PwC, there was also an aspect of a test where it was just an online quiz relating to kind of the way you think. So it was a test that had shapes and patterns that you had to kind of fill in the blanks for, as well as some analytical skills like reading graphs and that sort of thing. I guess both firms liked the way I wrote my resume and my cover letter, and kind of the roles that I had written on them. And just to kind of give a background on what my resume consisted of, because I was in first year when I applied to these firms, so I definitely didn't have a super impressive resume, I would say. Alright, so let's kind of just do a walkthrough of what I included when I was in first year on my resume when I submitted it to all the big four firms. So as I was in first year, in my education section, I included the fact that I was at the University of Waterloo in the accounting and finance program, and I included my high school and the average that I got there, as well as the awards I received. For this resume, I actually made it 2 pages just because I definitely didn't have a huge quality of roles, given that I was in first year and I didn't have that opportunity yet. So I have 2 pages worth of roles that I had done. One being an app that I helped co-found and was a chief marketing officer for, Accounting and Finance Student Association, which I was on in first year, the University of Waterloo DECA club that I was on, DECA president when I was in high school, Ontario Students Against Impaired Driving, I was the treasurer of that club, a senior home as a volunteer, I was part of my high school's mentors, and there was kind of 2 clubs that related to being mentors when I was in high school. And then I just had additional skills that I had, such as Excel or PowerPoint, as well as activities that I enjoyed to do. So my resume definitely was not super extensive, or it wasn't filled with all these amazing qualities that were directly applicable to an accounting role, but this is what I included. So that was kind of the process in applying beforehand. I definitely found that EY's was less stressful because the video interview question that they actually gave you 24 hours to prepare before you did it, which was definitely super helpful because I got to actually prepare an answer and practice that before I presented it. But then for PwC's, it was a little more stressful because it was kind of just a surprise question. They were pretty generic because one of the ones I remembered was just what was an obstacle that you had to overcome. And I found that pretty simple to answer, and I think that's something a lot of people can kind of take their own spin on that and answer it, so it definitely wasn't too difficult there. So after that was finished, I finally got a real interview. And this interview was like a combined interview, so it was both to attend these conferences, but it's kind of like an unspoken rule where if you get the conference, you also get a job because you go through this whole rigorous process. So first, I'm going to get into PwCs. So for PwC, they had one interviewer, and basically I just remember it was I think it was a manager that had interviewed me, and he was super, super nice. I definitely was very nervous because as a first year student, not really like used to interviews and not having the full confidence in my abilities, because you're in first year, you have a lot to learn when you're in first year. So I definitely wasn't super, super confident or anything. So if you're nervous, like if you get an interview, just know it's completely normal. Like everyone is for the most part on the same page as you. And so for my interview, I was asked quite a few questions, and it was actually a funny story because I remember the very first question was them asking me, what can you tell me about the CPA process? And in that he meant just like what courses do you have to take, what grades do you need to receive, do you need to take your master's or take that 2-year process where you're working and studying, how many hours of CPA hours do you need before getting it, taking the CFE, like just all the details. And in first year, I didn't prepare for that because, and I should have, I think, but I wasn't really used to interviews yet. So when I got asked that question, I was like, shoot. So I made up something, and I knew it was a bad answer. I just said something super vague, and then I realized he had a piece of paper in front of him, and he was like rating my answers, and I could see what he was ranking it. So I think it was like a scale out of 7 or something, and I got like a 4 on that question, and I was like, oh no, I really need to step up my game now. And then he asked a lot of questions that were more behavioral after that, which I definitely, I think, am pretty strong at, or I don't struggle too much with behavioral questions, I think. And so it was a lot of basic questions like, tell me about a time that you struggled in a group project, tell me about a time that technology helped you accomplish something, like a task that you were given when you ran into an issue. And I think that question was more so asked to see, like if you can leverage technology to its full extent, and if you can get through a hurdle through technology, because now in this day and age, as everyone is aware, you're going to be using technology 24/7 during the job, essentially. And then I remember him also asking, just tell me about yourself, the generic question about like who I am. He had also asked, what makes you a good candidate for this job? And then he also asked, why audit, why accounting, why are you like coming here for this job particularly? So I think it was a lot of generic questions, and I don't necessarily want to give like specific answers on what I said, just because I think literally every person has a different response, and I don't think me giving my answers really gonna help anyone with this. So I think it's more, I just wanted to give you guys like an idea of the questions you're gonna get. And I would say literally the entire interview was just behavioral minus the question about the CPA process, which I think is a very, very fair question to ask. I just didn't think about it. And then at the end, of course, they asked, do you have any questions? And I think this was what I was told most in first year: prepare questions to ask. Whether it's about the firm, whether it's like about what opportunities there are for you when you get into the firm, and it just prepare questions so that they know you're a curious person, as well as prepare strengths that are actually strengths. I think don't say you're a perfectionist and that's a weakness and a strength. I think it's okay to say you have a weakness, in my opinion. I think it's just important to also talk about, when you say that weakness of yours, what you're doing to possibly like improve that weakness you have too. Because I think with those questions, they can definitely see like right through your answer. So yeah. And I think another important thing is to just be yourself. I think personally, I am someone who's pretty energetic and enjoys working around other people. And I like talking to people, so I definitely let that show through, because in audit, if that's what you're applying for, which is what I applied for, so that's what I can speak on, you're going to be working with a lot of clients, you're going to be working with a lot of team members, and you need to really have that, interest in talking to people. Yeah, from then on, I pretty much got accepted. That process was super long, I'm going to admit, and it was really hard, I think, on a lot of people, like my friends as well as myself, because, you know, especially as first year student who's really trying to get a co-op placement, it can be very stressful when you don't have this exhaustive list of experiences and what you can really offer. So I think it's really just important for you to emphasize in all these interviews that you're someone who's super eager to learn and you're super eager to ask questions, because at the end of the day, that's all you really need for a job to succeed. You have to be willing to ask those questions that you're not afraid to ask, and to really adapt to any situations. So anyways, that was the PwC process. Moving on to EY. So EY's was actually a little different, because at EY I actually had two interviewers. I had one interview with a partner, and then I had an interview with a manager. And I got to know both of the people beforehand before I went in, so they told me who they were. So of course I searched them up on LinkedIn to see what they were like, to see what their roles were, what they did, just to kind of figure out who was going to interview me. And if you're given your interviewers, I highly recommend looking them up, because that's like a really good advantage for potential questions you might want to ask them later on. So that happened. So I went into my first interview, and was with the partner. And so he asked me two questions, and you have 30 minutes allocated to your interview. So he asked me two questions. First one was, tell me about yourself. Second one, what's the biggest obstacle you've ever faced in your life? Which is a big question. And I think I answered them both pretty well. And then at the end of those two questions, I think by this time, 5 minutes of the interview had passed by, and he was done asking me his questions. So, and then he sat back and said, do you have any questions for me now? And that's when I was like, it's 5 minutes into the interview, I have 25 minutes left. We need to have a conversation now. I need to be asking him questions. And I just remember on the spot, I just like started firing out questions because I looked at his LinkedIn, I knew about him. I asked about his like experience working at the firm, like his clients that he's had, what advice he would give to me as a student coming in, how he thinks I could succeed in the workforce, whether that's at EY or somewhere else, because, you know, I'm in first year, like I don't know much, you know, I'm not going to pretend like I know a lot. And I just remember that was the most nerve-wracking part of the interview, because I don't know, I think it might be normal, but I didn't know it at the time, that like interviews could go like that, and the entire interview would just be him saying, do you have questions for me? So it felt like I was interviewing him at the end of the interview. So that's why I highly recommend like have questions ready to go, because you never know what your interviewer is like. So that was the first part of my interview, partner. And then the manager came along. So I had him in an interview with this manager, and she had a really cool LinkedIn, because I remember seeing she had experience in law, and she was also working in audit. So that was definitely one of the questions I asked her. But this interview actually went a lot smoother, I would say, than the other one, because I felt less nervous, because she started off just by asking, tell me about yourself. And I talked about, you know, my experiences of working, and then I also have like a fun fact that I told her, which was that both my siblings also went to the University of Waterloo for the accounting and financial management program, which is what I'm in, so we all did the exact same thing. And then she talked about why her and her sibling are like polar opposites and how they do completely different jobs. And literally the next 25 minutes we just talked about that. Like there was no actual interview questions being asked, like it was just a full conversation. And I think it's like really important to know that, especially in audit, if you have an interview for that, they just want to know that you are someone that's social, as well as are like comfortable talking to new people in a new environment. You know, you're outgoing, you are excited to talk to people, you're excited to learn new things. And I definitely think that contributed to being successful in my interview, because when I thought about it at the end of the day, I usually try to reflect on all my interviews that I do, and with the EY one, it was very unique experience, because, you know, like I had one interview where I asked majority of the questions, and then I had another interview where we just talked about our families. And yeah, and then I later got a call from EY as well, saying that, you know, they wanted me to come to their conference. And then after the conference, I got an offer letter. The process was definitely hard and it was long, so if you're going through that right now, you're gonna get through it at some point. Another aspect I actually want to talk about was networking, which I think had a lot to do with me getting certain positions, because I also noticed that I networked when people came in a lot more with, honestly, with Deloitte, I honestly didn't really do any networking at all with them. So I think it made a little more sense why I didn't. But a lot of universities have these networking events, and I would highly recommend going on your school website to just see what networking events are coming up, because it might be online due to COVID now, but before it was in person. And I remember going to a lot of the EY and PwC ones, and I would talk to a lot of people, not just the recruiters there. I would talk to the managers there, the staff that came in to speak to students. And I would just really brush up on your networking skills. And literally, I think the best way to do that is just by putting your foot in the door and like just going into it and seeing how it is. It's kind of like a you learn as you do it kind of situation, because it is, networking at the end of the day is just conversations with people, and it's nothing like an interview. It's nothing super serious, so you shouldn't take it too seriously, I would say. But I think networking played a huge role, because in my cover letter I was able to name drop, where that can actually be seen as something that's like good to do, because like, for example, in a cover letter DY, I would say, because I spoke to this person and this person, they allowed, like, they explained to me, you know, that EY was an atmosphere where this occurs, and I think like that's something I want to be part of. Or this person spoke to me in this one situation where I really stood out, and it got me really interested in the firm. And, you know, kind of just showing that you have always been involved with the company and you've always been interested in them. That definitely puts you ahead. And then I was also told by a friend, you know, after networking sessions, they get your business cards, because at Waterloo they give us business cards, and I'm assuming a lot of schools do that. If not, getting business cards is really good to do as well, because after you talk to them, you say like, thank you for speaking to me, here's my business card, and like, if I could have yours as well, that would be awesome, so I could reach out one day. And they'll usually give you the business card, or they'll give you their LinkedIn information so you can message them. And by doing that, they actually save that card, and then at the end of networking sessions, they'll kind of like share how many business cards they got, and like, as well as like say, oh yeah, this person I remember had a lot to say and she was really fun to talk to, or this person, he had a lot of good things that he brought up and I think he'd be interesting to see again, or like maybe even have a job at this firm. So networking, I think, is vital to getting in. It's not the only way though. I think like if you have a very strong resume, if you have a good application as well, strong speaking skills, because that's where, you know, they see through your video interview if you have that or not, then they'll decide if they want to bring you forward to the next interview. But I think there's like definitely a variety of things that help, but if your school offers that networking opportunity, I think definitely take full advantage of that and go for it, because I definitely think that helped contribute to me getting to know a lot of people at EY and PwC. Yeah, hopefully everything that I said throughout this video is helpful to someone out there, and good luck on this application process, because I know it can be super stressful applying to new jobs and seeing what else is out there, but I know you're gonna kill it whether you get it or you don't, because there's other opportunities out there as well. And yeah, literally just comment down below if you have questions, if you like this video, if it was helpful, if I could make another video related to my experience. Thank you so much for listening, and have a wonderful, wonderful day. I will see you later.